So when you think about adventures, heading out, doing things that are fun, you can go to the mountains, you go to the desert, why not go to the ocean? You go to the ocean, probably one of the most photographed places on the planet where people frolic and play and sunbathe on the beaches, right? All kinds of activities, sailing, surfing, parasailing, paddleboarding, kayaking, snorkeling. It's all there. Man, it's just a plethora of things to be able to go out and do. So when you're a photographer and you're coming down to photograph places like the ocean, what do? Well, you obviously can come down here and spend your time photographing on the beach. Everybody should walk away with a beach shot when you're going near the ocean. The other is to think outside of the box a little bit on your trips and come down and shoot the local culture. Look for people that are unique, get portraits to them, talk to them, do little mini stories about them with your camera. Consider night photography, getting out of the box, all the neon lights that tend to go with these oceanside communities. Photographing some of the action, snorkeling, consider doing underwater photography. All of these things combined can make a really unique ocean adventure that is very different from the vacation or the photo trip that you took in a wilderness area. And the more you combine, the more you think of it, the more places you go and shoot. When you finish, you'll be amazed at how much you walk away with. And that's the big thing in photography is that, by the time day 3 rolls around, you've really forgotten all the things that you shot on day 1. And you realize when you go back, my goodness, I shot a lot of things. And you walk away and your slideshow, your program, your story, your article, however your pictures are ultimately going to be used, you walk away knowing that you've captured the ocean in a very unique and a special way with a broad base, not just the beach. Preparing for any kind of water-related trip with photographic equipment can be challenging. And depending upon where you're going and depending upon what you're doing, you kind of have to specialize in how you handle the protecting of your gear. Let's face it, you're not going to get great shots if your gear is soiled and wet and damaged and doesn't fire. When I go on rafting trips and what have you, I use a lot of dry bags, and I'll stuff my kayak in dry bags where you roll it up and it's waterproof and you cram and you stuff to make it work. I'm not necessarily in that situation here. I got plenty of room to put my gear, so I still need to find ways to protect it. Photographing down here in Key West and in the Gulf and out in the Atlantic, we're dealing with a couple of photography's biggest demons, salt water and fine sand. Both of these things can wreck your camera gear really quickly. So you take the proper precautions to do it. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Got a camera bag that's designed, that's kind of a waterproof, watertight camera bag that pretty much the zippers on the seals and what have you are watertight and I don't have to worry about them. The other thing is that if you want to go on the cheap and you want to carry that bag and not get splashing and what have you, you can literally just go to underneath your kitchen sink, pull out a heavy duty garbage bag and wrap your bag in that when you're traveling around. So if you're in a boat, you're on the beach and you want to keep it from getting wet and keep it from getting sandy, you can do this. It's a real tendency for me, I carry these all the time with me because if you look on the back of the bag, if I put this into the sand, it's going to pick up every piece of sand you can possibly find. So one of the things that I like to do is I go out and I spread this bag out and I throw my camera bag on top of this bag and it keeps the sand from getting all over my bag. So that's one of the easy ways to do it. So using kind of a waterproof, watertight bag to be able to carry your gear, throw your pad down on the sand so you don't have to worry about sand. But then it's the little things that help protect you. Take your filters and things like this. You're going to be someplace where you're going to get water and you're going to get wet. Ziploc baggies, gallon-sized Ziploc baggies are great tools for that. You can put them in here no matter what. If the baggie gets wet, they're still inside containers inside this bag. It's an insurance policy. Cell phone, wherever I go, if I'm going to be where it's wet, whether it be salt and sand, this always takes place and it works. If you want to go for the ultimate in taking care of your gear, you can go with the hard case. And these Pelican style cases are hard as bricks. There's a water seal that goes all the way around. So when you snap these guys, you can tell that it's pressure activated. You know that your gear is going to be protected. Now these aren't easy to access back and forth all the time quickly, nor is this. But when you're dealing with these kinds of situations, you're just being careful. Now, for the ultimate in wanting to protect my gear, if I'm going to be bouncing around on a boat where it's an open cockpit, and you know you're going to get splashed and you know you're going to get wet, then I'll even go one step further. I'll take my waterproof bag, water-resistant bag. I shouldn't say waterproof. I should tell you something about these kind of bags. If they're sealed properly and you don't leave your bag slightly open when you're traveling, like I see a lot of people doing, if it's tight and this bag goes into the drink, it's going to float for probably a good 15-20 minutes before it even considers sinking. Water's not going to seep in. Rubber sealed zippers. It allows me plenty of time to go back and retrieve the bag. So keep that in mind. Keep your bags zipped tight shut when you're traveling, because it just takes one splash to get water in there and you stop and go, oh, I wonder if the water got into that crack, and it probably did. So if I'm really worried about it, I take my water-resistant bag, and I've got this nice big rubber bag, which is a rubber duffel bag. You can see it, it's very pliable, but it's very thick. It also has a rubber seal zipper. So I can put this bag inside this bag. It's light, it's flexible, it's easy to carry, and my stuff is not gonna get wet. So if nothing else, I'm able to get from point A to point B and still get my pictures because my gear has been protected in sand and salty conditions. And there's just nothing worse than getting your gear, I promise you, there's nothing worse than getting sand inside your lenses and hearing your autofocus going. So protect your gear when you're out and you'll have a successful shoot. So when you're out in places like Key West, and the beaches, the Caribbean, Greek islands, wherever you're at, there's a real tendency for photographers to gravitate towards beaches and shorelines. You're always looking for interesting things to shoot, right? Details, patterns in the sand. So here we're outside of the Keys in Key West, and we're on Marvin Key, that intermittently goes between being above the surface of the sea and below the surface of the sea based on the tides. So it's a great place to come because oftentimes the patterns and the details that are out here, you never know what they're going to find, but at the same time you know that you're always going to get some fresh patterns in the sand that the tides and the ocean will present back and forth. So it's a wonderful place to come and look for things. Every once in a while you get lucky, you come across something where you look for the obvious things, you know, shells, patterns in the sand, you know, crabs that have washed ashore. But every once in a while you get lucky and you find things like a set of buoys or an old fishing pole or you know, maybe even a beached boat. All of these things that you look for that can add a visual element to your photograph. And so you come here and you're thinking, well, it'd be a great place to come out and get a wonderful sunshot, you know, of a sunrise or a sunset. You know, sunrise shots oftentimes require something to give it a sense of scale. So what attracted me were all these little rib patterns that are out here on this sandbar, that this sandbar now when the tide starts coming in an hour and a half, it's gonna be gone. So we have a very short window of opportunity to get shots here. Normally, I'd like something like a palm tree, you know, or you know, shells, anything I could find that might add something to the shot to give it a sense of scale and perspective. But I've got Lisa here with me today, and so we're out cruising around here in the Gulf. This is the perfect now. So Lisa, if you can, just walk by with the net that we found, and this will add a sense of scale and perspective to the shot. So as Lisa walks by, okay, go ahead, Lisa. Now as she walks by, I can get shots, and then what I really like it, right when she passes by the sun, I'm getting shots of the sunrise behind her. Then when she gets behind the sun, I get this fabulous silhouette, and it's adding a sense of scale and perspective to it. So if nothing else, while the sun is still so low, getting contrast to all of these wonderful patterns that we're getting in the sand, I can get one shot in here where I've got a sense of scale with the person, and then I'll start concentrating on the natural aspects of things here. Okay, Lisa, one more time, then I'm gonna start working the nature side. Got a great set of clouds in here. Perfect, perfect. Excellent. And notice I'm shooting completely as she walks from left to right, then I had her going over here, going from right to left. That just helps me in the design elements of the photograph. It gives me a lot of options in the same 10 steps that she takes. So now we're gonna go bounce around and try to find some natural patterns that are out here. So we get out, we bounce around, and of course the low light accentuates the details and the textures. So it's always good to be at places like this early in the morning, of course, or late in the afternoon when the sun is at an angle that provides that contrast. So right now as I'm walking around, there's these great patterns in the sand, and so I can use shots of the sun without seeing the sun. You see the sun a million times coming up, so why not use the sun reflections and not have to worry about actually getting the globe in the shot? And there's all kinds of wonderful things, just like the sand right here right now with these patterns. I'm completely eliminating the sun itself, but I'm using the light from the sun to give me the light that I want. And the other is that whenever you see a sunrise, a sunset, remember, oftentimes the best light is behind you. So when you look this way now, the light's bathing this mangrove swamp behind us. The light is spectacular, and the clouds above me right now are spectacular. This wonderful side light that's coming in, it's adding a great deal of contrast to our little sandbars that are out here now that are going to disappear shortly. And so I'm just playing off these fabulous clouds that we've got up top, and I'm using a wide angle lens. The reason I'm using a wide angle lens here is because I want to bring in as much of the drama as I possibly can, not only on the ocean floor here on this sand spit, but also these fantastic clouds. If the clouds weren't here, I may make another choice. But right now, the clouds, the boat, and the sand are all making a perfect combination here, so it makes sense for me to do that.
I'm keeping my camera angle up very high because it is with the sand and the clouds that are really making this shot. Now, one of the things I've done here is that I've changed my white balance. I've gone from auto, which had kind of a bluish cast, even in this light. I'm actually choosing my own color temperature now because the sun, there's not much atmospheric haze here right now, so the sun's getting bright. I want it to be warm, so I've actually added a little warmth in choosing my own color temperature in white balance. I don't know how long that will last, but that's just one of those things that I like to do. And the wide angle is just giving me such a fantastic perspective with everything here. There's just a glow to the sand right now, these little buoys that showed up. You want to get good shots sometimes with these sunrises too, so that you can underexpose it a little bit. And again, I like to get to that point, like in my camera, I kind of have it set on the blinkies, so I'm not going back and forth and looking at the histogram. I'm using the blinkies, and the blinkies are those flashing white lights for highlights that show me when something is overexposed. And I have an option here. I can go a little bit more saturated to make sure that everything is just nice and dark and rich, or I can bring my exposure up to the point where I start seeing the blinkies, knowing that I'm starting to lose data on some of the highlights, like on the boat and like on these buoys. And when I start seeing that creep in, I bring her down just a little bit because I want that data in my shot, because I can always lighten it later in post-processing, but I don't want to lose that data now while we're out here. So I'm going to grab a couple more shots of here, then I'm going to start moving on looking for some more other natural elements here. Looks fantastic, just looks fantastic. When you walk around, you see things like that, and you say to yourself, boy, it's amazing. You're walking this way, and you just see all kinds of patterns, and then you turn your head the other way, and there are no patterns. So a lot of your success depends on which way you're looking at it. And the thing you have to realize about that early morning light is casting shadows upon yourself. Make sure that you're not doing that. Making sure that you're not putting tracks over something that you see that you like. All of these little things. Photography is all about inches. And so paying attention to these little details when you're out, not only the textures that you're finding, but your own personal disciplines and how you approach your subjects. You see a little horseshoe crab, don't walk right next to it and put footprints in a spot that has a wonderful pattern. Walk around it, look at it, approach it from an angle to where you can get there without seeing your own shadow, without seeing your own footprints. And a great pattern there. Oh, look at the shadows. The shadows are what are really cool here. Little baby horseshoe crab. Shadows look kind of like a castle. Yeah, fabulous patterns in that. Tiny little guy, it's a little treasure, so by not walking too close to him from any particular vantage point, I'm saving myself of being robbed by having my own tracks in the shot. And that can be killer. You do that, then you don't have a shot. You've got to come in too tight. You're just not allowing yourself the freedom to be able to pull back if you need to. Even though this is a detail shot, if I'd step right up next to him and I have a man-sized print in size of a tiny little horseshoe crab, I ruined my shot. Shadows in this guy are lovely. Great details on the beach. I mean, how can you lose, shells, horseshoe crabs, jellyfish, sand dunes? It's all there. Very cool. Cute little guy. You can find when you come to places like Marvin Key here out in the middle of nowhere, you can get some spectacular shots. All right, Nancy, we're all set. Ooh, here she comes. Look at this bird jumping, Jiminy. Look at that bird. Holy cow. Hey, Nancy, I'm Lane.
I'm Nancy Forrester.
Thanks for coming
This
out.
is Lucy.
Lucy. Oh my gosh, you're so pretty. Oh, that's fantastic. So we've heard all about your macaws, and we wanted to come down and take some photos of them. So tell us about the bird.
Well, this is a scarlet macaw, considered one of the 10 most beautiful birds in the world. And he's used to being on handmade things. He's not used to being in nature, on trees. So this is an experiment for all of us to put him in a natural background.
So it's okay for us to take pictures of him? He's okay with the sounds of the cameras and things moving around? And
We'll find out.
fantastic. One of the great things for us, in coming and shooting, whenever you come to a place like this, when we heard about you and you had these great birds that you've rescued, you want to photograph it, and it's easier for a photographer to come in a situation like this because the birds are used to people. They're acclimated to people, so we can get close. I'm, 4 feet from this bird, and that already is an amazing thing, so I can't imagine how my lens is going to love this. But it's a great thing. So one of the things that's nice in a case like this is,
is there a way, and is it comfortable for you? I want to make sure that if we take the bird off of a normal bird stand or off your hands, to be able to photograph him in what seems to be a more natural environment, I can use this tree and actually hide and disguise the background in the house. Is that okay? Can that happen?
We'll do our best.
If you don't mind, let's try it, and I'll try to get some great shots of him doing that way.
You want to wave before you get on the tree?
Now, is Lucy kind of like a boy named Sue, Johnny Cash?
Yes.
So he's a
Yes.
boy bird, but his name
Yes.
is Lucy.
Yes.
I love it.
So I'm going to place him up on this little landing here.
Well, here we are in a setting like this, and one of the things you're taking into consideration right off the bat is that we've got an urban situation here with a house and what have you in the background. So I'm simply not trying to make it look as though he's in the jungle, but I'm trying to create a clean shot. And oftentimes a bird like this in its natural environment makes a cleaner shot. So considerations, I'm using a longer lens so I don't have to get right on top of the bird, and I can use that compressed telephoto lens to be able to throw out the focus in the background. The other is that he's in shade, which is better than taking Lucy into the sun, because if we're in the sun, it just kind of washes out those colors. The light here is even, so it's a much more pleasing light, but it's also deep in shadow. So white balance, I'm going to my cloudy setting to keep it warm and keep it nice so it doesn't get a blue cast. And then also, I've had to ramp up my ISO to make sure that I can hand hold this camera, because the bird's going to move around a lot. I can hand hold my camera at a shutter speed that's equivalent or greater than the focal length of my lens. So there's, look at this fabulous look. So let's grab some shots while he's comfortable being here. And I'm also using my autofocus. And I'm using the autofocus because he's moving around so much. I want to make sure I'm able to capture it. With a bird, any kind of wildlife, generally I'm going for the eyes. And so if my focus point is on the eyes, there's never any confusion in the viewer on how they see this picture. So look at that. And then when he turns his head, there's certain times when he turns his head and he's just right on top of the eye. The light hits his eye. So that's what we're going to gun for here. Let's see if we can get that. Oh, Lucy. There he is.
I could
There he is.
turn him toward you, but with a nut. Would you like
perfect.
that?
Oh, let's try that. Oh,
Excuse
great
me.
idea. See, when you're dealing with people like Nancy Forster here, she knows the birds so
There's a
well.
nut.
Following their lead and their tips is what really increases
Tina?
our opportunities to get a great shot of the bird. Thanks,
Well,
Nancy. That's just
It
perfect.
may not work.
Oh, no, he's eating it. That's perfect. I just got to slide over. Now, this is really nice. I've got some ferns that are in the background. They're creating a pattern, but it's a non-man-made pattern, which just makes it so much more intriguing for me. There he is. It's very nice. Look at that light on him. It's just beautiful. Now we're getting a little light that's coming around, but it's not bouncing on him as much as it's bouncing on the sidewalk and the area around. And it's giving me a little bit nicer light. Oh, there he goes. Look at that. Look at those feathers.
I don't really want this. Good. No, see, he's ready to bite me.
That's good though, Nancy. That worked. That worked perfectly. Hello.
He's waving at you.
He's waving. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. So he likes photographers after all. That's a good sign. When he tilts his head, he's catching some of the light from the tops of the trees, and it just becomes spectacular. So your light changes quite a bit, and this long lens close to the bird is throwing out the background light, and it's just making it a stellar picture because the bird, the color is not only going fa-voom, but the focus is also bringing that. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that, cracking that nut. And the nice thing about doing things like this, he's in this tree, is that I can move around, and just by moving around, I'm changing the color of the background. There are some places where I'm getting highlights in the background, so I can frame the bird's head and his shape in the backlight, which is bright, or I can go another direction and can actually shoot it where it's darker in the background, and the bird's colors become more saturated, and it's more like he's deep in the jungle. So you're changing the personality of the shot just by moving 3 or 4 feet either way. And again, this is what's great about being here, is because right now, you know, we've got moving trucks and things around. We're on the sidewalk in the middle of a town, but yet we're getting a feel here that looks like we're just in the jungle. So what we've got here now, we've got Aura, another macaw. Joe's taken her on a stick now. So now we've got the freedom of not having the bird just sitting in a spot in the tree. We've increased our capabilities of how we can get shots, backlight, front light, diffused light, dark light behind, by simply walking around with the stick. So this is one of the great things. If you're able to find somebody as kind as these folks are here, you can move the bird around and get great shots. And this palm is absolutely fantastic because it's got some light that's bleeding from behind it, so we're getting nice backlight, and we're getting this wonderful patterns that are going behind the bird that kind of mimic the feathers. It's a lovely spot. It's a lovely spot. Good work. So Joe, can we try now? Let's go around the other side of the leaf, and we'll just try some on the other side of the leaf. And so I won't backlight, it'll be front light. The advantage of being able to move the bird around, it's not in a cage, it's not a metallic settings that you might normally see, PVC pipe stands, old wooden stands, the things you see from the grocery stores. And I'm eliminating all the man-made things in here, which is making it just a stellar shot. If you think about it, would you frame a shot of this if you had part of a building or part of a fence or part of a cage in a shot and put it in your bedroom? No, you wouldn't. But if you got a nice clean shot, now you've got a wonderful shot where you can make a wonderful print, and it has a very clean look. We're not in the jungle. We don't need to be in the jungle. We're just getting a wonderful photograph of a beautiful bird. We were out in the front yard and saw the beautiful birds, became attracted to them, and got some shots. Hello! And so now we're in the backyard, and so we've got a whole different environment in the backyard. We have all of the domiciles for the birds. So if we're here to do a story on Nancy and her birds, this is a really good establishing shot to be able to get something like this, because I'm going to grab one right now because the light is going in and out with the sun. We have all of this kind of controlled chaos, which is a good environmental portrait of Nancy with her birds and the collection of birds here. But if our idea and our hopes are to come here and get a really clean shot of a bird, just like we did in the front yard, we want to turn around, we want to find ways to be able to isolate the birds and get them cleanly shot. So we've got Larry's over here sitting on top of his cage over here, so I can come in on top of him and just shoot from the breast up and eliminate the fact that his feet are sitting on top of his cage. So it's a way to get a good clean shot. The other is that with this wide angle shot, which gave me an establishing shot of the backyard, which I wanted to bring home with me as well, I can turn around and put on a long lens, and I can get shots of this macaw over here, a fairly rare macaw, and get him in its natural environment. Well, has a wonderful background that's natural. So all of these things combined, I can come in here and get an establishing shot, show Nancy, show her birds. She's sitting over here with two birds on her lap and her shoulders right now. Or I can turn this way with a telephoto lens, shallow depth of field again, long lens, shallow depth of field to eliminate the chaos of the background, but it's a natural background, and walk away with some spectacular shots of these marvelous birds. One of the great things about especially these telephoto lenses, if I can find places in the background where there's highlights with the compressed aspects of a telephoto lens, highlights in the background, because they're so thrown out of focus, become these wonderful large circles of confusion, which again just adds a visual interest to the background without defining what is in the background. It's a great way to separate the bird and get that sharpness and then something very colorful. Oh, that was lovely. He just shook for me and gave me a nice shot. Now, one of the things that I'm doing here too, as opposed to manual focusing, I have it on autofocus, and I'm pinpointing exactly where I want it to be. And I'm also using the focus points stream to the right or stream to the left, because if I keep it in the center, all I get is the head. But yet if I put my focus to the point, I can continue to focus on his eye, but I can allow more of the shape of the bird trail off from one side of the frame to the other, adding more interest. So I'm getting away from center disease, and I'm trying to make sure I'm keeping an eye, but keeping a flow. That's beautiful, look at that. And you can see that very, very few of my frames are directly in the center. I'm trailing, I'm using the shape of the bird as a design element to be able to see what he has. And the autofocus is allowing me, because he's moving so quickly, to be able to get shots that are razor sharp and see those beautiful textures in his eye and his feathers and get a nice clean shot. Fantastic. So just have fun. It's a great way to introduce yourself to somebody who knows these birds, making contact. Don't overextend your stay. Have fun, be polite, thank them, send them pictures as a thank you, and you can come to a place like Nancy's Forrester's Secret Garden and get great bird pictures. So when we think about coming down to the beach and shooting, what time of day, lighting conditions, the exposure considerations that we have to make, there's a lot that you have to contend with. You know, I think like all photography, you know, everything revolves around light. So if you get here early in the morning, oftentimes you can get that, you know, that beautiful light that comes up. But if you come here at sunrise, you know, who's here other than other photographers taking sunrise pictures? If you want to get people on the beach, usually then you've got to wait a little bit longer. And so when you wait a little longer, when it starts to get hot and your sun lovers start to come out, well, that's the time you come here and can start taking pictures. But there's another set of problems that comes with that. You know, oftentimes sun lovers like it when the sun is at its hottest point, which for photographers for the most part is when that's the worst time to be here. So depending upon what you're shooting, if you're shooting your girlfriend, or you're shooting a friend, or you're shooting your kids and you want a nice portrait, you know, things like fill flash, things like reflectors, all of these kinds of components that help increase and reduce our contrast, add light, work to our favor. The other is that you just look at the light and you find out what light is the best. We were embraced with having a lot of palm trees here today, and the nice thing about the palm trees is that I could use the palm trees basically as a sunblock. I could expose for the people on the beaches, shoot directly into the sun, get the color, the translucence of the palm trees that was coming through the sun that was behind them, but eliminate the sun, which would give me that horrible hot spot that we're in. So it all worked together. So, you know, one of those rules here, never shoot into the sun. Well, doggone it, there's some cool shots, you know, that you can get shooting into the sun. So that's kind of the way you can approach this. Side light, your shadows, things that you can play off. When you come to a white beach, there was a couple of gals today, for example, that had those great big white sun hats on, and they were both staring out into the ocean. And as I was walking behind them, I looked at that and I went, that's kind of a neat shot, these two big round discs. The nice thing is, remember, the sand beach was white, and so normally that kind of a shot looking back into the sun again would have made them silhouettes in order to expose it properly. But again, we're gifted white sand, and the white sand is reflecting enough light on their backs that I've got a natural reflector that's working for me, so it made it a nice shot. I didn't have to underexpose and make silhouettes just to make it work and not have to worry about my highlights getting blown out. Yesterday I was out and I found a beach on the side of a little sand formation that was on one of the beaches. Looked fabulous, a little conch shell. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I don't know my shells that well. It's a pretty shell, how about that? And it's in a lovely spot because the patterns of the shell are kind of mimicking this sand pattern, this little pool that it's by. So I don't know if it washed up from the little pool or what it did, but it's right here. And it's a great shot. And so I've positioned myself on the shell, so I'm actually seeing the sun hitting the shell, but the back side of the shell is in shade. So one of the things I thought I might try to do here, and I'm lying on the sand, so this was going to be a little bit more difficult time-wise to set up the tripod. But I thought, well, what a great little place to put a little bit of fill flash in it, but I don't want to use the flash because I don't have time right now, but I got a piece of notebook paper. And so in order to hand hold this, I've got my camera now set on self-timer, so it frees up a hand. I can hit the button. I've already pre-focused. I'm going to put my little white piece of paper, that's my notepad, inside, and I'm bringing it in, and I'm just giving myself a little bit of fill flash by using a bounce card, using just a piece of white paper that came from my camera bag. I'll show you one here with and one without. Here's without. The reason I have the self-timer is because I have to hold the camera above the sand down here. I can use my other hand to use the fill card, and so the self-timer is giving me a capability of being able to do that. So, you know, it's really simple. You know, oftentimes I carry white paper, and I can use it, and I'm getting just enough bounce light to give some life to the back side of that shell. So it's a wonderful shot. And same thing is that because I'm also down here, I'm actually using the sand as somewhat of my tripod, because again, I want a maximum depth of field because the patterns in this sand right here are fantastic, and they're mimicking the flavor and the patterns that are on the shell. Could have been luckier to have found this. And this fill light is giving me just enough light to bring some life to the back side of that shell. And I'm using the sun again, but I'm not seeing the sun. all those benefits that come together so quickly for something so wonderful. Okay, move on. Great little shell. So it's these little things. We think as photographers how to not only to find things that are compositionally interesting, things that are layered with content, but also how we can create the best photograph we can based on the tools that we have available. So is there a best time to come to the beach? No, there's not. But when you come to the beach, look at the light, figure out what you need to make a great shot, and man, you can come back from any time of the day or night at a beach and walk away with some really cool photographs. One of the things you can do when you come to the beach is people tend to think of filters. And what's the first filter that comes to mind for anybody when they come down the water is the polarizing filter. And certainly that's one of the filters that's important because it polarizes both the water where you can see through and see the depth of the water, but also you can take corners of the sky where the sky is bright and darken that part of the sky, which brings your attention back down to your subject matter. Another filter that you can use is the infrared filter, especially when you're out places like this where you've got all these palm trees. And the thing about this infrared filter is that it is the R72 filter. You want to match the filter size of your lens, but it's black, it's opaque. And so it's very difficult, if not impossible, to see through. So what I've done here is that I'm using green. And remember, the infrared filter will cancel out anything that's green that has chlorophyll in it. So anything that becomes green in real life becomes white through the polarizer in infrared. And it really makes a tremendous difference in what you're shooting in here because you have to focus because you can't see through it first, and then you screw the filter on because you can't focus once you get it on there. So turn your autofocus mechanism off. You put the filter on and it completely negates any metering possibilities that you ever thought you knew before. I'm shooting on a very bright day backlit, and with this filter on at 200 ISO, I'm at a 25-second exposure just to get something on the image. And so obviously it needs to be on sticks, it needs to be mounted, you need to have a cable release, and you need to fire at least 20-25 seconds at f8 just to get something on it. But when you do, it's magical. Now remember, if I haven't set my camera in a monochromatic black and white mode, it's going to record this infrared in color, which is fine because I like that. So now what happens is the palm trees are going to turn this kind of fluorescent orangey pink color, which almost makes you want to gag in how they look. But I take that shot then and then I convert that shot in post to turn it into black and white, which gives me that really dreamy white quality that everything that's green has. So some of the considerations you have to take in mind when you're using a filter like this infrared filter, which again is the R72 filter, anything that's moving through 20 seconds is going to be out of focus. We had a sailboat go by here before. I don't even think he's going to register because he was moving fairly quickly. So things like the palm trees, things like the sand and the grasses that aren't moving, they're going to show up naturally. But people moving back and forth will not show up in your shot. So think about those kinds of things when you're out there. If you want movement, you're not going to get it. So if you need something stationary in your foreground to complete the composition, make sure that it's there and it's in your frame when you shoot. But it's going to bring a whole different world to a very common scene when you're taking pictures. Commonly around places like water, frozen lakes, wide open spaces, the prairie, where you've got a lot of sky, oftentimes the use of a polarizer really comes in handy. And we're out here on the beach right now here in Key West, and we've got a couple of these catamarans that are out here with some lovely sails. And we've got a nice deep blue sky behind him, and I could simply underexpose my shot to deepen the blue, but then I'm giving up other areas of the shot. And the nice thing about the polarizer is that as it bends the light, polarizes the light in certain areas, the filter is designed to kind of rotate. And so as I rotate it, I can actually look to see where I'm bending that light and getting that polarizing effect in certain areas of my sky. So I can accentuate either the sky that has some clouds to the left of my frame here, or I can put the darkness, the bending of the light behind the sails and actually make them pop out a little bit more in a very deep sky. So it has a wonderful effect when it comes to things like landscapes and places like this blue sky. The other places that polarizers work really well are reflections. So when you're dealing around water and you've got crystal clear water, but the sun is at an angle that puts a sheen across it so you can't see through it photographically. When you put a polarizer on, again, it bends those UV lights, so it eradicates that sheen and lets it penetrate the surface so you can actually see what's inside the water. So it has a multitude of uses to it. If it's strictly thought of as being a device to underexpose your shots to deepen the saturation, you can do that with your camera. You don't necessarily have to have a polarizer. The polarizer has a specific usage. And I see a lot of people walking around with these things all the time, and I just don't think that that's necessary. Use it for what it's designed to be used for. Otherwise, use a graduated neutral density filter if you need more time, because you do lose a stop or two with these things. Otherwise, just underexpose, and you can get that same effect. So it's a very useful filter for certain situations, and it can really accentuate certain areas of your sky or your reflections or your lake, and can really enhance your photography. So what I've got here, I've got this wonderful shot of these palm trees. I've got a real wide angle on. Oh, there comes a guy walking through. And everybody's taking it easy on the beach. Two people are sitting watching the beach. A guy's out on the water. But now it's this guy's walking through the scene. Now what that does is that gives me movement. Now I got a person coming and a person going. You know, it's that kind of stuff that makes shots like this perfect, because to capture the iconic beach shot, it isn't just getting a beautiful woman in a bikini walking down the beach. That's been done a million times. It's better, in my opinion, to be able to shoot the beach, which gives us more information about the beach. So here we are in Key West, and I've got these wonderful grove of palms that are right here. And right as I was walking up, it isn't like I went and studied it. I just wait to see the things that jump out at me and say, shoot me. I'm able to point my camera with a wide angle lens, and I can actually get the sky, and I'm right underneath one of these palm trees. But it gave us this feeling of we're sitting under these palms, and then people are out on the bright sunlight. It's backlit. People are merging and coming back and forth across the beach. And so what I'm looking for, rather than just one person sitting there and enjoying the beach, I'm waiting for all of the other elements to come together. Oh, I've got a sailboat going out now. I'll be able to get the sailboat now. There's a paddleboarder coming the other way. People, but you can see where my head's going. If I can combine all of these pieces of information in one shot, because I'm shooting with a wide, they're small, but you're seeing it. I'm including the environment, I'm including the beach, I'm including the palm trees and activities all in the same shot. So we're layering content. And that's really what you hope to get in something like this. The backlight here is quite nice. All right, now excuse me for a minute, because the paddleboard's coming and I want to get that. And the sailboat, which is moving out. All of these kinds of things make for just great beach shots. And I can come in tight if I need to. I can move back. The more I move back, I have to be careful with distortion. There it is. Oh, there's a guy walking. There's the sailboat. There's the paddleboard. Look at that, all in one shot. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. But you can see what it is. It's this combination of elements. There's a parasailer way in the distance in the same shot, jumping Jiminy, it's all here. That's what I'm looking for in these iconic shots, is trying to get this. Keep in mind, your rules of thumb, rules of thirds, your parameters on how you want to frame a shot. I'm looking for images that are coming together and blending well, they're balanced, they're well balanced. The color in the background, because I'm backlighting here, the sun isn't behind me, you do have to be careful of exposure. The beauty of digital is that you can take the shot and look at it. What I'm really aiming for is to make sure that some of the green in these palms is still coming through, and it is, because they're fairly translucent because of the sun's backlight. So I'm gifted that. And so then the beach itself, I'm exposing for the sand, because if the sand gets blown out, we've got no place left to go. So you want the sand to be exposed. So if there's anything you want to go for, is get your exposure on the sand, bring it to the point to where it's just about to clip or be overexposed, and then take your shots there. Let the backlight do what the backlight does so naturally, which is what attracted me to coming to the spot in the first place. And it's really that simple. You can come here and you can shoot wide. I could look this way and compress the shots with longer lenses, but it was this framing here, the coconuts that are still on the tree, and framing the palm tree here, that all seemed to come together to make just a really cool, iconic beach shot. So we're here at Key West. We've heard that Eric the cigar roller works inside the Schooner Wharf Bar, where he rolls cigars, sells cigars, and he sounds like he's kind of a local character. We had seen a photo of him. He's got a beard down here. It looks like he'd be a great character to come in here and get shots of and tell a little mini story about somebody who's grown up and lives here in Key West and sells cigars out of a bar. You can't get any better than that. You know what's really funny is that I'm from Minnesota and I'm hearing the Edmund Fitzgerald song now, so I kind of feel like I'm at home already. Let's go see what we can get. So when you're coming to a place like Key West, you're trying to tell stories about a place. One of the great things about it is you find somebody like Eric and you get permission, you get someone who knows him. We had a local contact that made connections with him. Perfect scenario. So we come into the bar, he's in the middle of the bar, it's fabulous. And we're gonna tell a story about Eric. So when you think about local characters and how you photograph them, it's more than just coming in and getting a photo of him. It's getting a photo of the entire process. Him rolling the cigars, close-ups, all of these people that came to give him hugs and talk to him, buy cigars. All of these things worked out just perfect for us. So I'm getting some establishing shots while he's working. And I love this angle where I can see him through his cigars as he works there. It's a wonderful portrait of him. Whenever you're shooting a story, think in terms of the details. What are you seeing? If you're going to do portraits of a local guy like this, make sure you got the flavor. Make sure you see what he does. And what he does is he makes cigars. So we want to make sure we show some of the cigars, the things that he uses in our shots. And he's got a real variety. Some of them are fun names. There's kind of neat design elements with them. Lighten it again. I want to get the flame and you in that one. So let me... So oftentimes with shoots like this, these close-up shots of the cigars, it's all about detail. And remember, everything doesn't have to be sharp. You just need something that's sharp in the shot that gives us a sense of place. Allowing the out-of-focus parts of this to go out of focus actually adds to the shot.
All hell broke loose.
One of the things you're looking for is all these little nuances. The cigars that are there, you know, he's moving things as he's lighting cigars for customers, as he's passing things along, as well as there was a shot here where he was actually counting his money from a big sale, and I'm able to shoot that through the cigars. So you're combining cigars and the transaction. It's the kind of things you look for when you're out shooting something like this. So what we're doing now is we're getting shots of Eric as he's going to roll out a cigar. I've got a wide-angle lens on because he's got a unique little table here, and that's enabling me to be able to see all of the information as he goes. But what I'm mostly interested in are his hands. So I'm coming in very close to shoot his hands so I can see what he's doing with the details. So the more we include, the more we get. This wonderful flavor of things that are going on. So when you're cutting it down like this, what is it that you're cutting it down for? This is going to wrap? Cutting off the sides. It isn't just an environmental shot. You think in terms of shooting picture stories. You need an establishing shot, you need a portrait shot where you come in a little bit closer, and then you need the detail shots, things that give us texture, things that we can feel from what that person is doing. And with Eric, it was rolling cigars and seeing cigars. So when you do that, it's fantastic. What was the liquid you put on? Just some kind of just moisture so it seals the sugar water, and that holds it together? Oh, I see. And then now that's the part that's going to get cut off with the trimmer, right?
Yeah.
When someone buys it.
That holds it together, keep it from running around. That good?
Rock on, man. That was perfect.
That good?
That was good.
Good enough?
That was good enough. You just try to get as many things as you possibly can. You just keep on shooting and kind of let it play out as it does. And as it played out as it did, the patrons are into it, his friends are into it, Eric got into it. Next thing you know, they're relaxed and they're doing things the way they normally do things. They forget the camera's there, and then you're in great shape and you get a wonderful story out of somebody who's just in the middle of a bar in the middle of Key West, and he's a local character. It's perfect. When you come to a place like Key West, that's known for its crystal clear waters and turquoise colored blue mixed waters, you can't help but think about, geez, how can I get shots down here underwater? Well, there's a variety of ways. I'm not trained as an underwater photographer. I live in the north, and it's difficult for me to do that, and it hasn't been something that I've kind of gravitated towards, but it doesn't mean I'm interested in trying it and looking at other places. So when I came into Key West, we just bought a small little Nikon AW100, which allows you to go underwater. And we had hired a boat to take us out 7 miles from shoreline to get to a place to where they were known for this fabulous reef where people go and get these incredible pictures of things like the yellowfin tuna and the coral beds that are out there. But we got our driver, we got our cameras loaded, extra batteries, all the things that you need to do, snorkels, fins, masks, all these things, with hopes of going out there and getting great shots. Well, the ride out there was more like a rodeo.
Now I'm assuming that when we get to Blue Key Reef here, I don't expect that the waves are going to diminish any, but anyway, we're going to take the Nikon AW100 down into the water and see what we can't find on the reef. Kind of fun thing to do, but you know, it's a little bumpy out here, but we're on our way to some, hopefully some beautiful fish, maybe some grouper. It's just another good day at the office.
Yellowtail snapper.
Yellowtail snapper.
The thing about going out with the seas like that wasn't so much of a problem, is that we were really worried that the waves and the wind were going to kick up a little bit of the sand at the bottom because it's shallow out there. And the problem that underwater photographers tend to face is that if the water gets kicked up and it gets cloudy, clarity drops and the issue of getting good, clean shots kind of diminishes. So we'd gone out and gotten our shots. We got a few things, but we really found out that our visibility levels on getting something clear and sharp with contrast was literally between 6 inches and a foot apart. Even when divers would come up and snorkelers would come up to us and we could see their mask, even by the time you would see their feet in the same frame, it was always just a cloudy shape as opposed to being something crisp and clear. So that's the way it goes. You know, you give it the old college try. But the thing about underwater photography is there's any number of ways that you can do it. You know, there are manufacturers out there that make bags, these large, hardcore, rubbery plastic bags that have inserts for your lenses that you can put your DSLR into and put it in there and get underwater. They seal, they roll, they seal like a dry bag for kayaking, and it enables you to be able to put a piece of clear glass over your lens. The baggie gives you function so you can still use your triggers and what have you and still shoot underwater, keeping your lens safe. Now all of these bags, there's different kinds, there's different sizes, there's different manufacturers. And so obviously what I would suggest is that you take something like this and you use it prior to going someplace where you may be putting it in places like saltwater where it could really damage your cameras. Then you can take the next step up. And if you take the next step up, you know, you can actually get housings for your camera where there's a lot of companies out there that actually make a plastic plexiglass housing specifically made for the model camera that you have. So all of the opening spots where you can actually gain access to the controls are there and made specifically for that model camera. Now what happens is you go from an underwater camera like the little Nikon AW100 we have that's around $200 to the plastic bags which are about $300 to the models which are about $1,500 to $2,000 to the full size controlled models that have arms for flashes and all kinds of capabilities of enclosing and protecting your camera gear to $5,000 and more. So it depends on your interest, it depends on your desire, on what you want to shoot, how you want to handle it. And all of these things in consideration, just because you have a $10,000 housing doesn't mean you're going to have more success than we had going out to the reef yesterday when the seas were rough, because it's like all photography. It's the conditions and it's the light. If the light's not good, the photo's not going to be good. If the clarity is diminished, you know, think about shooting in fog. If you're trying to shoot a cityscape in fog, while it could make an interesting shot, if your assignment is to go there and your desire is to get a clean shot of the city and it's immersed in fog or smoke from a local fire, you don't get what you want. That's just what happens in the game, you know. And so a big part of it is we've got a great story going out in some rough seas and really concentrating hard on not losing our lunch as we bounced around out there. But regardless, we still got a couple of shots. We learned something about underwater photography, and we know that the next time we go, we'll wait for very, very calm conditions when the clarity is up, the light is perfect, and we can really maximize the camera that we bring out. We finished an underwater day and we started talking about wildlife, and next thing you know, the message we got was that there's this unique species of deer that exists here in the Keys called the key deer. And we found a location where we'd gotten permission to go to, and they said, listen, these deer come out of the mangrove swamps and they walk across the stream every night on their way to this neighborhood where they feed on grasses and I'm sure people's hibiscus and other plants. So we decided to give it a shot. All right, well, this is the spot that a friend of a friend told another friend that knows somebody where we might see some key deer, which is indigenous only to the Keys. And we're here to get them. We haven't seen a deer yet, but they're supposed to come right down this pond and walk over to the neighborhoods to feed. And look at this, kind of in this
mangrove swamp here, and look at this fabulous little boat. So while we're en route, let's don't waste opportunities here. I'm gonna try to keep my voice down and movement, but this is actually very, very cool. I like this boat. No sense wasting opportunity. The light over here is spectacular. Geez, if they'd only come through there, we'd be in great shape.
You know, we didn't know. They said at dusk. Well, what does that mean? I mean, dusk to me means, you know, right after the sun is set, but it could mean before the sun is set. So we went out there and walked around, and we were in the river checking it out and trying to see if there was any sign at all that we could tell where they came out from and where they might go. Next thing you know, the sun set, and we're going, oh man, it's at that point now where it's almost getting to be too dark to shoot. And so every 5 minutes you're taking your ISO and you're going from 800 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,200, 1,200 to 1,600, going, oh man, if it gets any darker than this, all I'm going to get are pan shots because I can't get still shots because it's too dark. Next thing you know, you started hearing some noise in the water. Next thing you know, 1 deer comes out, 2 deer come out, 3, 4, 5, moms, babies, a buck, shooting away. Yes, it's grainy, but we got them. They were there. And as we continued to photograph them, they kept coming closer and closer to me because I was actually in the path that they normally take to exit the creek and go up onto the bank. Once we realized that, we moved out of the way, and sure enough, they came right up and they went into the street. Next thing you know, they're walking down the street, but by this time, the light had diminished such to the point that all I could get out of them at this point was to get down low and shoot up against whatever sky was remaining to get silhouettes. But doggone it, it was the coolest thing. Photographing deer at night in a mangrove swamp, crossing a creek, doesn't get any better than that. So you know, the sun goes down, you've had great shots, a good productive day on the beach, you know, in the woods, parasailing, all the things you want to do when you're down in places like beautiful Key West. But it doesn't mean that once the sun goes down that is the end of your photographic day. There's so many more things to shoot. You know, sitting around the fire with friends, you can shoot a bonfire, and while you're shooting the bonfire, and you can set the camera off to the side and go down and have a beverage on your own, you can shoot stars while you're waiting. You can come around downtown, you can shoot the iconic locations that are downtown that are splashed with neon lights and moving cars and flowing streams of people wherever you go. All of these things add flavor to the story that you've gone out to tell with your pictures. So we're downtown Key West right now, and we're looking at some of the iconic bars and Duval Street that exist down here, and Sloppy Joe's is one of those places that is kind of an iconic location here. So how do you shoot that? Well, the best time to shoot with all the neon lights, all the hustle and bustle, is to come down at night and shoot it at night, as opposed to the day when oftentimes it's harsh light, and it's tough to get good shots down here unless you're here at the right time when these steep buildings have sun on one side or completely shade on the other. So nighttime, why not shoot nighttime? So this particular case, because this particular establishment is on a corner, what I'm doing is I'm doing these long exposures to get star streaks, car streaks, tail lights, headlights to add something of interest, as well as then you're able to see the intersection of where it exists. It's got the neon lights on it, it's kind of a classic location. So I'm doing a series of shots overlapping by thirds to give myself a panoramic. So this will be a very wide shot, but you're going to see the entire intersection and the 2 streets that it goes on. And then also each corner, each intersection has brightly lit buildings. So in a lot of ways, I have a visual anchor on both sides of my frame, which makes it a more pleasing shot. Now, when you're doing something like this, one of the things that's great, like when I'm looking this way, is to wait for cars to go by, because then I'm getting streaks as opposed to a car stopped and just giving me bright lights or headlights that are just blaring. Streaking lights are much better. So you can sit and wait. There's no real hurry because nothing's changing except the people that are moving in the cars that are traveling by. So I've got one more exposure to get here. I'm going to move it more towards the end. I've got that light that's anchoring things. And so I'll just do this varying my exposures, because the key here is to be it before it gets dark. Once it's dark, it's just lights and a sea of blackness. I've got ambient light behind, people moving around. Some people are standing. Those who are standing are going to look and I'll be able to see them. Those that are moving will just be blurred like ghosts out of the shot. So it's one of those fun things to come out and shoot. And so we've chosen this corner on Duval Street here in Key West, and we're just having some fun. And it'll be a long, skinny panorama with 7 or 8 images that compile the whole theme. So we got this great spot here, the Tropic Theater here, which has a wonderful marquee here on the cinema. And we're just a half a block off Duval Street, which is kind of the iconic street here in Key West. But it's got a small miniature Maryland, you know, with the dress flying up. It makes a wonderful photograph. There's something about these neon lights, this kind of Art Deco look to it that is so fitting for a shot of Key West. So if you're thinking about showing photos of Key West at night, this is one of those places that you could stop and get a great shot of and everybody would enjoy it. So all I've done now is I've simply just moved across the street with a slightly different angle, because across the street, Marilyn was part of the scene. Now she's the focus of the scene. And with these neon lights, one of the things that I'm wanting to do is to vary my exposures as much as I can because of the night. I want a little bit of that ambient light to come out, but I also want to make sure that I don't blow out all of the neons. And so, you know, it's one of these things that I can merge these later, which would be a great way to go, but I'm trying to find that perfect exposure. We're here just at darkness, and you want to be able to get that little bit of that sky in here. So that's going to be important for me to get a kind of a bracket of this, because if I want to get that sky and keep that sky, which I do, I have the alternative to be able to go back and merge these together and photo merge and get a nice bracketed shot all together. So this is looking really good. And I'll do one more where I come in really close. Now let's try another angle. This has been straight on showing the marquee, but now I'm gonna sneak in behind and risk looking up her dress. Now in this case, whenever a car comes by, I have to make sure that those headlights don't come into the shot, because if they do, it's gonna kill the shot, because it's gonna be a highlight in a place I don't want it. So I'm trying to be very careful about that. And one came by, so I'm gonna go back the other way on the bracket. The cars? No, I made it. Actually, it works out kind of nice because it gives me a little backlight behind. There's another car. If I have time, let's get that. Go out and shoot at night. Have fun. Don't end your day when the sun goes down, because there's so much more life out there to capture. Wrapping up another shoot here in Key West, Florida, on a little adventure trip down here to capture some good photographs. We've been lucky. We've been able to get things like photographing a unique species of deer that was just a fortuitous moment, a happenstance situation, where we got introduced to deer that only exist down here, and we got a location. We were able to go there and get them. Rockin' cool. Able to get beach shots when the sun came out. The weather was decent. We got to go out onto the ocean, where we went 10 miles out to a beautiful reef that was rocky as all get out. I mean, everybody was just doing everything they could to not lose their lunch. But you know, it's one of those things in photography, is that oftentimes experiences like this are vehicles that we use to be able to go places. And you know, still a bad day on the water is still better than a good day at the office, and that's the way it rolls sometimes when you shoot. Did we get great shots that day? You know what? We didn't. The heavy waves obscured the surface and obscured the sandy bottoms, clouded up, so we didn't get what we wanted, but we tried. And we got great shots other places. Night shots, cultural shots, a wonderful portrait of a cigar maker downtown, the key deer, you know, the parrots, where the gal saves the parrots. We got lucky and we had a great shoot, and I'm glad you could tag along. All right.